How's it going, Patreon folks? Here is another tutorial. Typically, I'll do 2 tutorials a month, but I'm giving you guys a bonus one just because, I don't know, this month was hectic and let's throw something out there. Let's do something nice. So this is actually kind of a redo of an old tutorial on YouTube, but all these shapes I had done as procedural materials, and it was very complicated, and it was one of those examples where it's a cool animation, but maybe more complicated than it needed to be. So in this case, we're using geometry nodes as the way to kind of set up the animation, but this is all just very primitive models. It's planes and circles and stuff. So it's far easier and it's very rudimentary geometry nodes. So you guys, of course, are going to be able to access this project file here on Patreon. But we are going to go ahead and open up a new instance of Blender. I'm not sure why all my stuff is so puny. And we are going to get it going. So just blank document, and we're going to go and import a plane, and then this is all we need. So this is where we're going to set geometry nodes, but I'm actually going to go ahead and Shift D, duplicate this plane, and then Shift D, duplicate another one. So these are the first two assets that we're going to make. So what we're going to do is go over here on this one, add in a wireframe modifier, turn on boundary, and make it a little thicker. And then that's all we are going to need to do. And then leave this one as is. Now we're going to need to get a circle. So let's go ahead and get in a circle here. Not sure what I did there. So we need to go get a curve circle. And I'm going to hit G and move them up here. And then what I'm going to do is over here in the curve settings, I'm going to give it... Let's see. What resolution do we want to get it so that it's just curved enough? Looks like 20 is good. So put 20 on your resolution and render. And then here on the geometry, we're going to give it a depth. Some depth about the same as this one. So close. We want them to be about the same amount of thickness. And then let's go ahead and go to mesh, circle, and then add circle. We're going to give it, let's say, 45 on the vertices, and then on the fill type we're going to go Ingon and then bring that there. All right, so this is what we're working with here. Now some of these objects you can really make in geometry nodes, but my kind of take on it is if it doesn't need to be that complicated, then don't make it that complicated. So it's needlessly complicated to make everything in geometry nodes. It would just be ridiculous. So we're gonna be act like sane human beings and build things when we need to. If you're really into just building everything procedurally, you know, more power to you. It's always good. I used to be like that with procedural materials, but you know, this is one of those cases where if you're working with a client, sometimes you got to go fast. All right, I'm done rambling. Let's go click on this guy. I'm hit the period key to kind of center it out, and we're gonna go to geometry nodes, and let's set up the base for this entire thing. So we're going to click new, and then we're going to delete the group input, and we're going to get a grid. And let's plug this mesh into geometry. And then here on the size, we're going to give it a size of 30. And we're going to go to vertices of 55. All right, so now we have this massive thing. We can actually take our objects. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Let's see. So these two, hit G, and then these two, hit G. And then what's this guy's code? There we go. Okay. Just move them out of the way. All right, so let's go to wireframe view, and I'm going to go ahead, and we need to break this up with a little bit of a few nodes. Very simple geometry nodes here. So we're going to do a separate geometry node, plug that there, and we're going to keep it on point. Now we need to go ahead and get a color ramp here, and we need to go ahead and get in a noise texture, or any texture that has a 4D, any texture that has 4D capability, because that is where the animation is going to come from. And notice now we can break this thing up. It's really cool and it's really fun. So we're going to break it up kind of about halfway, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get a join geometry and plug the inverted into the geometry, which is going to bring everything back. So it's not going to look like everything is back, but we're dealing with points and not faces, so it's going to be all good and all fun. So what we're going to do is use these two sections here to start instancing our objects here. So we're going to do an instance on points right here, and once it highlights a particular string, just plop it and bring it up. And then we're going to go ahead and Shift D and plop it on the bottom string. And then I'm going to bring this up so we can have more space. So now we have our two sets. So this is probably one of those times where it's good to name your objects. I don't do it too much, but we're going to call it C1 for circle, and then C2, and then B1, B2. And that's important because we'll call this base. So now that, let's go ahead and use the, let's get the boxes or the squares first. So B1 and B2, and then plug them into our instances. So I'm going to go out of that into flat mode. So we're going to do this, and then we're going to plug this one into instance here, and then bring that down as well till they're about the same size as their siblings. So there we go. Now we've set up this grid, and then with the W, you can actually animate them. But what I'm going to do here is break this whole thing up one more time with another separate geometry. So do that here. I'm going to highlight these two, use G to bring it down. I'm going to duplicate them and then plug that into the selection. And what that's going to do is we'll notice if we bring this in, they'll start to disappear. More of them will start to disappear. I do want to break it up as a whole. And then just bring your color ramp from this one in to bring back those full cubes. And so now, if we play with that W again, you're going to see them animate in and out. So try to find some kind of happy medium. So there we go. Now they're bringing in and out. Looks great, looks nice. Especially once we add in our other materials. All right, so this is kind of the template that what we can do now is I'm going to go ahead and then hit Shift D and bring one up. And then we're just going to focus on this one again. So click on it, see this number 2. That means this node tree is applied to two separate objects, which is happened when we duplicate it. So click the number 2 to make a new node tree. And then instead of B1, we'll do C1. Instead of B2, we'll do C2. And now it's converted to circles. So now we have the squares up here, circles down here. And then I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to bring this one up, hit Shift D, bring it down. So now that we have a third one here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the number 2 so we get a duplicate. And then I'm going to go ahead and take this grid here, and I'm just going to unplug it and highlight everything. Hopefully you can't hear all the people moving outside. And then we're going to get an instance on points. Plug mesh to points and plug instance to geometry. And then we're going to take B2, and then on scale we're going to do 0.05, and then plug geometry into instance. All right, cool. So now we have our 3 scenes. We have the circles here, squares here, and then all these small squares, which I'm going to do 0.005. I want them to be super small. All right, cool. So now that this is kind of set up, we have all of our, I guess you could call them particles, because they do kind of behave in a particle way. I'm gonna go ahead and get mesh, call it plane. I'm gonna hit S5, just like this. Now we're gonna go ahead and position all of our pieces. So that we can just kind of see the smaller grid, I'm gonna go back to geometry nodes and go 0.05. I wanna be able to see them for now. Once they're in position, we can actually change their scale. So now that we're here, I'm actually going to delete that. Get another plane and do S10. That's going to be way better for our camera. All right, so let's take these guys, all these particles we made, and I'm going to hit RX90 to rotate them. And then let's set this one up. So I'm going to get this guy to be way over here. Like there. I want it to be right on the edge of this scene. And then him kind of an equal distance. So I want them all to be relatively equal distance from each other. So like this. That seems fair. So now we have this all set up, and then I'm going to bring these guys to the center. Cool. this is our grid setup. Really nice. So I'm gonna hit the tilde key and go to the front, Shift A and get a camera, and then I'm gonna hit Control, I'm gonna hold down Control, bring it to the edge of this. The reason why I created this guy is so that we can have a guide to where to move the camera so that this is a seamless loop. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna highlight this plane and the other 3 planes with the particles. I'm gonna hit M, new collection, and call it loop. I'm gonna hit OK, I'm gonna hit Shift A, collection instance loop, and we'll hold down Control and get it to where this plane is touching that one, but not there. It's gotta just touch it. And then I'm gonna hit Alt D, hold down Control, Alt D, like that. And what I'm gonna do is just keep making these. So I'm gonna bring it to maybe about here. That is probably going to be enough. That might be too much, but it won't really matter, honestly. I'm gonna click on my camera here and give it a focal length of 20. I want it to be pretty wide angle. And then let's go to the camera icon, switch it over to Eevee. And then we're gonna go to the render view so we can see these guys. So it's really just all weird, nothing good. So I'm just gonna click on this plane, go to the material icon, click new, on principled, go to emission, give it a strength of maybe 10, and kind of a blue. And you notice nothing's happening. If you've been using geometry nodes, you'll know why. So what we need to do is go back to geometry nodes. I'm gonna go to the render view here, and we need a node called set material. Set material, and then select that node. And now this one is selected. Let's select this one. Actually, let's select him. Control C, Control V, plug it there, and Control V, plug it there. All right, so now we have all of these guys with materials. I'm gonna click on the world brightness and bring it down to black. There we go. And then I'm gonna click on my camera and look at that mess. So what we're gonna do is click on the world, go to volume, and then we're gonna do principled volume, and then just bring your volume back to where you like the amount of objects that you can see in your field of view. So I'm just gonna kind of test it, G and middle click. That looks pretty good. All right, so let's go ahead and animate the camera so that we can get rid of these planes here. So I'm gonna give myself, we'll keep it at 250 frames. I'm gonna go back to frame 0 by hitting the back arrow, click on my camera, and then I'm just gonna try to visualize where I want my camera to stop. So I'll say right about here, I want the camera to stop. So I'm gonna click on here, see that -10. Go back and I'm gonna hold down Control and bring it there, holding down Control, or you can just type in 70. And that's gonna bring you exactly where I am. And then if you press play, you'll get an animation. Now I think I made a major mistake, so I'm gonna go to my preferences here in the animation tab. Yep, Bezier, we need to go to linear. There is a shortcut to fix this easily. I don't remember what it is, so I'm just gonna go ahead and clear the keyframes, click this, go to the end, type in 70, and now we're good. Okay. So this is gonna drive me crazy. So let's go ahead and click on this one, which is gonna be the last plane with geometry nodes. We'll go to geometry nodes and we'll bring the scale of it to 0.005. There we go. So now you can kind of see why I did that. It does give it this really nice, interesting look with these tiny objects flying by the camera. And that's why I did it, and it gives you a nice amount of space. What I'm going to do next is click on the camera, and then we're going to animate the rotation here. Go back to frame 0, of course, click that, go to the end, type in 360. And it's a lot faster than I typically would want to do it, so maybe we'll go to, say, 400 frames, and then we'll bring it here. Nice. All right, cool. Next thing we're going to do is animate a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this base. Which one has the material? Okay, so let's bring my material brightness up. Actually, no. We'll go back to 10. That's fine. We can make it glow in Eevee by turning on bloom. So now it can glow a little bit once we get closer, which is really, really nice. All right, now we need to go ahead and animate these shapes. So let's go back to geometry nodes, and we need to animate. Let's see, is it this one? Or is it this one? I think it's this one right here. So we need to animate. I'm going to animate this one right here, the last separate geometry. That animation looks, for some reason, looks better, slightly different, so we're going to go with it. So bring your W to 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate the noise texture by not changing anything on here. And we're going to get a mix and change it over to color, throw it there, and then plug the factor into B. And then I'm going to move up a little bit so that I can kind of see those circles. Bring your factor to 0. And then I'm going to go ahead and get a timeline and go here to timeline. Go back, go to frame 0. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hover over the W of this top noise texture. Make sure we're at frame 0. Hit I, and then right here in the factor, bring it to the left and hit I, and then go to the end. And I'm going to type in 2, and on factor, bring it over, hit I. Now that we're at 400, I'm going to hit I on the W, go back, go to frame 0, and -2, and then hit I. And now that's animating. Now let's go ahead and see the square one, and that's going to be base number 2, I believe. Yeah. So let's take this noise texture, and honestly, it's either one. You can animate either one. They kind of do very similar things. So bring it to 0, and we're going to repeat the process. So, and I bet I could just copy and paste nodes. It just occurred to me, but we're going to do it again just for practice. So bring that there, hit that there, go to the end, bring it over, type in 2, highlight there, go to the end, -2. And now we're done. We have a really nice animating, very cool looking grid, motion graphic style, awesome animation. You can just use for all types of things. It's really awesome. It's very useful. I'm actually going to zoom my camera in a little bit, make these objects look a little bit bigger. That's better. And this is the tutorial. We're all done. Let me just show you how to export it, and we'll have it all done. So click on your camera icon, the printer icon, select your resolution here, and then I'm going to go here to FFmpeg video, encoding to MP4, medium quality to perceptually lossless, and you'll render animation, and it'll be all done. I hope you guys learned some stuff. This is such a cool animation. It's this type of stuff I love to make, love to see. So hopefully you get to use it in your own work, your client work. Feel free to use it for whatever you want. And I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.